Hello guys, Tom here from Coding for Youth. Welcome to Coding for Youth channel. Uh, I'm happy to see you today. Happy to be with you today. It's been quite a very long time. We uploaded video. A lot of projects we've been involved in, and I personally, I always have you in mind. See how I can create one or two videos. Well, before we begin, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and leave your comment in the comment section as well as like the video. It's been quite an interesting time, and the world has really moved from COVID-19, and of course, a lot of people are coming into programming, and it's a very wonderful time. You can see that programming is quite, a very interesting um, career. So this channel, we actually created it for youth, encouraging everyone to learn how to code. Uh, Virtually everyone. It's quite an interesting thing to do because the world is being controlled by computer currently. So we want to start you know a new series, and we're going to be starting with Python. Python for everyone. I'm going to be your instructor today, Tom Yone. Um, Of course, there are a lot of channels out there, a lot of professionals out there who are creating wonderful videos, impacting lives. Um, and I want to encourage you to, also search and learn from them as well. Learn from everybody, you learn new things, and then you grow. So today we're going to begin with Python from the very scratch. So we'll talk about what is Python. Of course, Python is a popular programming language. Its popularity has really increased over time. This was a program created by Guido van Rossum and released in 1991. We'll talk about what do we do with Python. What can you do with Python? Well, Python is actually Python can be used, on the server to create web applications. You use it to create, develop softwares. Can be used in mathematics and system scripting and all that. Python can also be used along other software to create workflows. Python can connect to database systems. It can also read and modify files. It can be used to handle big data and perform complex mathematics. Python can be used for rapid prototyping, or for production-ready software development and all that. Um, why Python? Python works on different platforms, whether you're on Windows or Mac or Linux or Raspberry. Python can be found everywhere. It has a very simple syntax, similar to English language. Python has syntax that allows developers to write programs with a few lines, other quite more simpler than most programming languages. Python runs on interpreter system, meaning that code can be executed as soon as it is written. And today we're going to be using a Mu interpreter or text editor that has a built-in interpreter for Python. Okay, there are other editor out there that you can use, but today we'll be using the Mu editor. Okay, this is the editor we're going to be using today. Okay, Python can be treated in procedural way. It's also an object-oriented way or functional way. You can either code Python either of these ways. Now, we just before we start, how do we install Python? Of course, Python comes with most PCs and Macs, but if you want to check if you have Python installed on your system, you can just go to your command lines. cmd, and then you can just type Python, and then you hyphen twice as a version. If Python is installed on your computer, you can see I have Python already installed on my computer, and the version I have here is 3.10.2. Okay, so you do that to check the version of Python installed on your computer. Now you can, if you don't have Python installed on your computer, of course you can download Python from python.org and download the latest version of Python, from there. So let's go to our new editor. We will not talk too much in this class. We'll be doing a lot of work. So let's get started. So I'm going to create a new file. Then I will save this file. I will save it somewhere in my computer. I'll just save it. Let me create a new folder. I'll call it Python 2022, and I'll name a new file intro.py. Now every Python file must end with a .py extension. So I'm going to save the file, and then our very first code is going to be to print, how to display or to print to the print an object into how do you display or echo or print an object in Python. So to do that, I'm going to type print and then brackets or parentheses. I can use a single quote or double quotes. Just say hello world. Make sure you close the quote back and your parenthesis is closed. In Python, you don't need to put semicolon, you don't need to put a comma, a column or semicolon at the end of the line. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and if I click on run on my new editor, you see I have hello world at the command prompt bottom here. Okay, so this is where the Python is being displayed out. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Now you save your file and open your command line, navigate to you can equally run this on your command line. Okay, now I would like us to go further and discuss some other things. Let's talk about the syntax, Python syntax. Python syntax can be executed by writing directly in the command line. Okay, now you can equally create a Python file. If you want to write directly to the command line, like what we just did, we can come here and then we just type Python. That will give us the Python command line, and we can equally print what we just did in our new editor. I'll say hello world, and then enter. You see it's printed here. Now you can see that my Python command prompt is actually active. Okay, so I can do a lot of things here. I can do some mathematical arithmetic operations here. I can say 20 plus 40, and then I have 60. I can also do multiplication. I can say 4 multiplied by 6, and then I have 24. I can do division here. I can say 6 divided by 2, and then I have 3. Okay, so I can do a lot of things on the Python command prompts. That's if I'm using my command prompts. But on the other way around, if you save your file, you have your code written in a file, and then you can execute it using your text editor. I can equally execute the one that the code, my script or code that I wrote, I stored in the file, I can run it from my command, my Python command line or my command prompt. Okay, now I want to talk about Python indentation. Now indentation refers to the spaces at the beginning of a code line, where in other programming languages the indentation is in code is for readability only. The indentation in Python is very important. Now, for instance, if we come back to our new editor and then I just come to the first line, if I want to write a conditional statement and I just say if, now in Python I can just say if 5 is greater than 2. You see the way Python conditional statement is written, I have to put a column at the end of the line. In the moment I press enter, it will continue with that block of code because it has not ended, and it will be indented. It will be indented to 4 columns or 4 columns ahead, because that's the default. If you're using 2, you have to be strictly using 2. If you're using 1, you strictly use 1. So I can say print, I can say if 5 is greater than 2, print hola. Okay, and then if I come here and say s, print hi. If I Control S to save this, stop, Control S to save, and then run, or have an error. The reason is that my else statement is supposed to be on the same line with my if statement. So indentation is very key. Now if I Control S to save this and stop this and run again, you see I have polar, because 5 is greater than 2. If I change this 2 to let's say 8, and then save and run again, or print high, you see I printed. Now let me talk about comment in Python. How do you comment out, how do you write comments in Python? Now comment in Python can be written, let's look at comments in Python. Comments in Python can be used to for debugging or explain a particular line of code. We can also use comments to prevent execution. For instance, if I don't want the print hello world, which is the first sentence here, if I don't want it to be printed, I'll just comment that line of code out. Now to write comment in Python is very simple. Just use hash, and that hash is actually a single line comment. If you want to write, if you want to put multiple line comments, you can use 3 quotation mark, and then you see everything has been commented out. But if I come at the end of here, also put the 3 quotation mark, I still have my comments. So that's how you write comments in Python. Now if I Control S to save this and I run it again, you see only hi is being printed. So I've talked about single line comments. You can equally use the hash to write multiple line comments. Each line should have a hash at the beginning of the line. The moment you put a hash at the beginning of the line, everything on that line will be commented, will not print out. Okay, so that's how you write comments in Python. Now let's talk about variables in Python. Now what are variables? Variables is actually a space in the memory of a computer where you store values. So variables store values or data values. Now how do you create variables in Python? To create variables in Python, you don't need to do a special declaration the moment you assign a value to a letter or the name of the variable, then you have a variable created. For instance, let's create some variables here. So we're talking about variables. Now, if I say x is equal to 5, I have created a variable. If I come here to print x, now you see 5 will be printed at the execution line. You see 5 is being printed here. Okay, so 5, the value of x now is 5. So what about, let me talk about strings. Let's say y is equal to how are you. If I come here, if I print y, you see how are you is printed. So variables do not need to be declared with any particular type. It can even change type after they have been set. For instance, if we come back to our text or our editor and then we already set the value of x to be 5, if we come down here and say x again, and at this time we're going to say x is equal to 10. If we try to execute this, run it, you see the value of x has taken the current value, which is 10. Okay, so let's talk about casting. What is casting? So if you want to specify the type, the data type of a variable, that can be done with casting. It's more like we're talking about TypeScript. Okay, writing now that's when you implicitly specify the data type of a variable. That's what we call casting. For instance, if we come here, let me just take off all this, and we say x is equal to string, and then we say 3. Now let's do y equal to integer int 3. We'll say z equal to floats. Control S to save this, and we're going to print them out. Let's print this out. So we're going to print the different variables. X, let's print y, and then let's print z, and Control S to save this, and let's run it now. You see that explicitly we have declared the value of the variable x to be string. Implicitly rather, we declare the value of x to be string and that of y to be integer. Okay, and that of z to be floats. The first value here is actually a string. So for instance, if we want to confirm if this is actually a string, what we do, if we come here and print the type of x, we can come here and say print type. That's how you know it to find out the data type of a variable. So if we say print type X, Control S to save this, and then we run again. You see it will tell you that this is actually class string. Though you don't have in new editor, you don't have uh, a quotation mark around a string in your command line. So now let's talk about we've been using double quotes in our string, in declaring our string. What's the implication of using double or single quotes? Should we use double quotes or should we use single quotes? Now, string variables can be declared either by using single or double quotes. Either way, you have a string. It's the same thing. Now, let's talk about some other features of a variable in Python. Now, variables must obey some certain rules. Variable names are case sensitive. For instance, if you have let's delete this. Let's clear everything we have here, and let's say we have a variable called x lowercase. Let's use b, and we say this is equal to 4. I'm using single quotes for my string here now, and then I have capital letter B, and I say this is equal to 3. Okay, so if I come down here and I say print B, print capital B, we'll Control S to save this and run. We have our string, and then we also have our integer. So you see that the value of B, of lower letter or lowercase b, did not change to 3, because the uppercase b is different from lowercase b. So variables are case sensitive. You should take note of that. Variables are case sensitive. Now, what are the types of names you can use for your variable declaration? A variable must not begin with a digit, a number,